Hello, my name is Yvonne, and I'm a storyteller, and I'd like to tell you the story about the ghosts of the Guild Inn. So the two men were setting up their equipment. They had come into the Guild Inn. It had been all locked up tight, but the councillor had let them in. Their plan was to overnight at the Guild Inn. They had brought flashlights and flasks of coffee to keep them awake all night long. They had approached the Guild Inn with enthusiasm. They were looking forward to this venture. There were two men, so there was George. He was a big husky fellow with thick black hair and a bushy beard and bushy eyebrows, and a thinner, smaller man. His name was Sam. He had red hair and a red goatee. So they came into the Guild Inn, and there was a strange, eerie silence about the place. It seemed to envelop the building, left them feeling very odd. When they came in, P.U., the place stank to high heaven. Musty old smells like mice droppings and food gone bad and things dead a long, long time. Well, they had set up their equipment as they planned on the first floor. There wasn't any furniture, and the floor was strewed with a layer of dust and dead leaves, and spiders had hung webs in all the corners. They drank their coffee, and little Sam, he started hallooing. "Hello, hello, any ghosts here?" "Hey, cut that out," said George. They monitored their equipment, but there wasn't a flicker. There wasn't anything on the equipment at all. It was going to be a long night. They talked about their old cases, and then they talked about the ghosts of the Guild Inn. There was supposed to be a ghost of a soldier who roamed the grounds and the stairwells and the hallways of the building. And another ghost was supposed to inhabit the basement and the kitchen of the facility. Staff who had used to work at the Guild Inn, why, they had said that they had heard moans and groans and doors slamming and cold drafts of air. But nothing so far. It was very quiet, and surprisingly, George's eyelids started to droop. Sam had fallen asleep, sitting in the chair beside him some time ago, and was snoring quietly, when just then George thought he heard something out in the hallway. It was a creaking. Someone was creeping on tiptoes, coming to the door. He checked the equipment, and he thought he saw something registering on the meters. Then there was nothing. It was very, very quiet. Someone waited to make the next move. And then George leaned over to wake Sam, who was sleeping soundly beside him. And that's when the screaming started. It was a high-pitched, wailing scream in his ear. And he felt something light and feathery brush over his forehead. He reached up to slap at it, but his hand meant nothing. There was nothing there, just thin air. His hand clapped down on his head. And then he took his hand away, and he saw there was blood on his head, a splotch of blood on his head. "Blood! Blood! Aye!" screamed George in terror, loud enough to wake the dead, loud enough to wake Sam anyway, who was sleeping soundly beside him. Well, Sam jumped up out of his chair, and in the dim light of the equipment, he fumbled for his flashlight to turn it on. And there was George, laying flat out on the ground on his back, not a mark on him, just a splotch of blood on his forehead. And away from that splotch, there was a streak of blood to darken pale skin. "Vampires!" shuddered Sam. "Vampires!" And then his flashlight flared again, and he saw beside that streak of blood there was a very big, very dead, very squashed mosquito. And that's the end of my story about the ghosts of the Guild Inn. This is actually an adaptation from an old Civil War American folktale that I adapted particularly for the Guild Inn. It was called Blood on His Hand. So if you'd like to hear more stories like this, good stories, I have a group that meets once a month. We're called the East End Storytellers, and we meet at Morningside Library on the third Wednesday of each month from 6:30 to 8 p.m. We sit in a circle and exchange stories and have tea and cookies, and there's no charge for that. So thank you very much for being such good storytelling listeners.